Hey guys, tonight we're stepping into a place most people only think they understand. You hear desert and your mind probably jumps straight to heat shimmer, dry lips and that one cartoon where someone crawls through sand begging for water. But right now, you're not under the noon sun. You're here when the light is fading, when the sky turns a strange violet, and when the sand begins to exhale all the warmth it held during the day. And if you're not ready for that, yeah, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You feel it begin the moment the last line of sunlight slips behind the dunes. The heat doesn't linger here. There's no soft fade. One moment the sand is warm beneath your feet, and the next, it's like touching the back of a metal spoon pulled straight from the freezer. The desert doesn't negotiate. The desert changes like someone flipped the world's biggest light switch from scorched to shiver. It catches you off guard if you're new. Your breath comes out in thin, visible threads. You rub your hands together, confused. You look around like maybe you made a wrong turn. Is this still the same desert? Yes, it is. The same place where, just hours ago, the sun had you convinced you were being slow roasted for someone's lunch. This is the first thing you learn out here. The desert is dramatic. Subtlety is not really its personality. You pull your robe closer or around your shoulders. You shift your weight from one foot to the other. There are no trees to break the wind, no grass to hug warmth into the ground, no lakes reflecting residual heat back into the air. The sand lets go of warmth the moment the sun leaves. It leaves you standing in a landscape that feels suddenly bare, open, and a little too honest. Historians still argue whether ancient Bedouin survival strategies were learned gradually over generations, or adopted quickly through cultural exchange. But either way, the methods run deep. You can feel it in the way the night wraps around you. Not with cruelty, just certainty. The cold isn't a surprise to people who belong here. It's an expectation. You take a breath. The air is crisp enough to taste. It tastes like stone, dust, silence, and a hint of stars. Yes, stars have a taste out here. If you know, you know. Above you, the sky expands into something impossibly wide. In the city, stars are pinpricks. Out here, they're glowing scatter jewels across black velvet, sharp enough to make you blink. The Milky Way looks close enough to scoop in your palm. You feel very, very small, and strangely, very calm. It's like the world grew larger around you, but your worries shrank to something manageable. One historical fact slips in here, quiet and steady. Bedouin navigation by stars was so precise that desert travellers could determine their direction with fewer than 5 constellations, even in complete darkness. That's the kind of skill that makes GPS look like training wheels. Out here, the sky is not decoration. It's map, clock, calendar, memory. And while that's impressive, here's your quirky tidbit. Some Bedouin oral traditions describe the desert night as a living guest that visits daily, one that must be respected, observed, and never underestimated. Imagine treating cold itself as someone knocking at your tent entrance every evening. You don't fight the guest. You make space for them. You adapt your rhythm to theirs, which is honestly pretty polite. The desert could use a PR team. You keep walking, sand shifting under your feet like it's sighing. You don't rush. You can't rush here. The desert punishes rushing. The cold here is not the frantic, stinging kind you might get in a snowy city. It is slower, heavier, something that settles into your bones like it is reminding you to rest, to quiet down, to listen. The Bedouin learned this long ago. You do not challenge the desert's night. You meet it. You build your movements around it. The night is not an enemy. It's simply another shape of the world. And you, walking now with your robe pulled tighter and your head wrapped to hold precious warmth, are learning the first lesson of survival. You cannot overpower the desert. You can only cooperate with it. You hear the wind shift, a long, low hush, like someone dragging silk across stone. Sand rises and falls in tiny waves. No trees rustle, no birds call. It's not silence exactly, it's presence, like the world is awake, just quiet about it. You tuck your hands into your sleeves. It's a habit you pick up fast. The warmth of your own body is more precious than anything you could build out here. You start to understand why a crackling fire isn't automatically part of this picture. Fire means fuel. Fuel means wood. Wood means trees. And if you've noticed, trees are not exactly crowding for space here. And even if you had wood, fire glows. Fire makes smoke. Smoke drifts upward, visible for miles. Out here, visibility is invitation, and not always the friendly kind. So the Bedouin learned how to survive cold without flame. They learned warmth from each other, from cloth, from placement of tents, from knowledge of wind patterns. But not yet, that comes later. Right now, you're simply learning how the night arrives. A curtain drop, a temperature collapse, a reminder that the desert has two faces and you must accept both if you want to live in either. A little joke floats into your mind. Look at you, surviving the desert at night. Basically a National Geographic documentary subject now. The only thing missing is the deep narrator voice describing your every move. Though honestly, if someone narrated you shivering, it would sound less heroic and more like, here, we see the human realising they should have brought a second layer. Still, you're learning, slowly, quietly, correctly. You look up again. The stars do not blink. The desert does not comfort you, but somehow it doesn't reject you either. It just waits. It watches to see if you'll learn its rhythm. And you will, because now the night has settled fully, and you are inside it. You keep moving, because out here, movement is the real home. Your feet press into sand that shifts but never quite collapses. You don't wander aimlessly. You travel with purpose, even if the purpose is simply staying alive in a land that doesn't care whether you do. You begin to notice something about the Bedouin way of life. Nothing is extra. No object is carried without being used. No gesture is wasted. Everything you have is chosen, stripped of ornament, tested by wind, sun and time. You might think of travelling light like a trendy minimalist TikTok challenge, but the Bedouin were doing it long before aesthetic Pinterest boards. Out here, minimalism isn't lifestyle, it's survival. Your pack holds only what the night demands, nothing that belongs to your ego. You move because staying in place is costly. The desert is not generous with resources. One well may last months, or a week, or a day. Pastures for camels shift with wind, with rain, with seasons that barely look like seasons to anyone else. So you learn to follow the subtle signs. The greener side of a dune, the smell of moisture carried in wind, the flight of birds that should not be here unless water is somewhere nearby. Historians still argue whether the earliest Bedouin migrations were seasonal or opportunistic, tied to trade or strictly pastoral. But the truth is, you don't stand around debating it when the water dries up. You move. You always move. You walk now with your robe pulled around you, but your steps are assured. You don't stomp. The sand is not a place to fight with your weight. It's a place to glide. Your feet make shallow impressions, like you're writing in the desert with a whisper. The constant travel shapes more than your gear. It shapes identity, tribe names, family names, honour, memory. All of it moves with you. Your home is not a pin on a map. Your home is your people, your direction, your shared rhythm. And yes, occasionally your camel. The camel looks over at you right now with that expression camels always have. Somewhere between judgment and deep existential awareness. Camels don't hurry. They don't stress. They don't doubt. They just are. Maybe that's why they fit the desert better than humans do. They hold water in ways you cannot. They store energy like the desert stores silence. And they walk like they invented the concept of not caring what others think. But back to you. Your possessions are few, your robe, your keffiyeh, a water skin, a blade, a coil of rope, and maybe a small pouch with tea leaves that smell like smoke and earth. You don't have clutter. You don't have drawers. You don't have just-in-case items. If it doesn't serve the desert, it doesn't come along. Here's your quirky tidbit. Some Bedouin oral traditions advise never naming a favourite object because to love an object too much invites the desert to take it. It sounds like superstition, but honestly the desert does seem to enjoy stealing things. Sandstorms bury, winds scatter, dryness cracks. So sure, maybe don't get too attached to your canteen. You walk in rhythm with the landscape, which means your journey matches the pace of daylight and shadow. During the day you move early, before the sun becomes a brute. At midday you rest. Shade is life. Shade is wealth. Shade is time to breathe and maybe joke about how your cousin fell off his camel last week. No one ever lets that go. At night you travel when the moon is bright and the temperature is merciful. The desert softens then, not kinder, just calmer. The movement defines relationships too. You don't collect furniture, you collect stories. The world isn't divided into home and away. It's all one continuous expanse of possibility. But that doesn't mean chaos. You know exactly where the caravan trails carve invisible lines across the land. You know where wells hide beneath dunes disguised as emptiness. You know which tribes favour hospitality and which you do not want to meet unexpectedly. Movement teaches you attentiveness. When you stay still in a modern house, the walls do the remembering for you. Out here, you remember. You read the horizon like a text. You listen for changes in wind pitch. You smell smoke and know if it belongs to wood, dung, trade incense, or something unfamiliar that requires caution. Because yes, there are other travellers, some friendly, some indifferent, and some the kind you would very much prefer not to be visible to, which loops back to why your life cannot be weighed down with things. The more you carry, the slower you move. The slower you move, the longer you're exposed. Time is not measured in hours, but in how long it takes danger to catch up. You begin to understand why later, when the night gets colder, you will rely on your clothing, your shelter, your knowledge. But not fire. Fire stays still. Fire roots you in place, and rooted things are vulnerable things. So you walk, not urgently, just inevitably, like the desert itself, moving grain by grain in dunes that look permanent but shift a little every day. You travel with others. Family, tribe, caravan. You're never truly alone. The desert is too wide for solitary pride. Someone carries the water knowledge. Someone carries the map in their memory. Someone sings to keep the pace. Someone knows the safest dunes to sleep behind, angled away from the wind. This is collective survival, not lone hero narrative. If the cold feels sharp now, it's okay. You adjust. Your body learns to make heat in motion. You tuck your chin into your scarf. You share breath with the night instead of resisting it. And slowly you start to feel something you didn't expect. Not fear, not discomfort, but belonging. The desert is not trying to kill you. It just does not make it easy to stay. It asks you to be present, to notice, to move with intention. And you are learning how. You are no longer a stranger walking into cold. You are someone who travels lightly, lives in motion, and understands that survival is not an act of strength, but an act of listening. You don't stop walking, but the landscape begins to shift in your perception. The cold is still there, yes, a quiet insistence pressing along your arms and the back of your neck. But now your attention settles on the idea of shelter. Not walls, not houses, not the heavy rectangles of permanent life. Something softer, something that moves with you, the way your breath moves, the way the dunes move. You come upon the tent, but not just any tent. The Beit al-Sha'ar, the house of hair. It looks humble at first glance. Just dark cloth stretched low across poles, edges pinned with ropes and stones. You might think it's thin, too thin to hold back the cold pressing across this night. But you step closer. You touch it. The fibres are coarse, slightly oily, like the fur of the animal it came from. Goats that graze the plains and hills under the same sun and moon you now stand beneath. Black goat hair, woven not tightly but with a looseness that allows the tent to respond to weather the way lungs respond to breath. When the air is dry, the fabric loosens and lets wind pass gently so the tent doesn't tear. When the air is damp, when clouds gather, or rare rain arrives like a blessing few ever witness, the fibres swell and seal, becoming suddenly water resistant. In the desert, even the shelter knows how to adapt. You duck inside. The temperature shifts instantly. It isn't warm, not yet, but it's contained. The wind hushes outside, and inside you hear your own breathing again, steady and familiar. The darkness isn't empty, it's comforting, like stepping into the inside of a shared secret. The tent is low to the ground, not tall and proud like the ones tourists imagine when they picture nomad camps. The desert doesn't reward pride. Low tents resist wind, they hug heat. They let you sit and lie and breathe without the sky pulling warmth from your ribs. A mainstream historical fact floats through your mind here. Bedouin tents were traditionally divided into two main spaces, one for the family, one for guests. Because hospitality was not just kindness, it was law, identity, pride. A stranger at your tent flap was not simply a visitor. They were someone under your protection, no matter who they were before the horizon brought them to your shadow. But that is for later. Right now, we are talking shelter. The tent feels like a womb of woven night. The goats that gave this hair once walked where you walk now. They knew the heat, the cold, the hunger, the dryness. Their coats learned how to exist here, and Bedouin hands learned how to transform that survival into architecture. You sit down. The ground is layered, rugs, blankets, maybe old woven pieces softened by time. Nothing is thick, but everything is thoughtful. Your body doesn't touch sand. Sand steals heat faster than wind. You must always be aware of what touches your skin. Your host, or perhaps just the one who arrived here before you, adjusts a flap near the entrance. Not wide open, not tightly sealed, a careful angle. Because the desert is not just cold, the desert moves. Air swirls, patterns shift. You either work with them or you spend the night wishing you had. A quirky bit of lore comes to mind. Some Bedouins say the tent is alive because it breathes when you do. When wind pushes, the wall curves inward, then releases outward again, like a chest, like a body, like the tent is watching the night with you. And honestly, sitting here, it's hard not to feel that. The fabric moves subtly with every breeze, as though listening to something older than memory. You stretch your legs, your hands rest in your lap. The cold isn't gone, but it's no longer biting. It's something you can manage, something you can live beside instead of against. Historians still argue whether the black colour of the tent was chosen intentionally for heat absorption, or simply because goat hair naturally produced dark fibres. But sitting here, you feel how the tent holds the warmth left from the day, faint but present, like embers under ash. Maybe both are true. The desert rarely chooses a single answer. Someone nearby, maybe you, maybe another traveller, mutters a soft joke about how camel hair tents never caught on because camels shed like they're trying to become bald philosophers. A low laugh ripples through the space. Humour is gentle here, like everything else. The night doesn't need loudness. You lie back slightly, elbow supporting your weight. The tent ceiling is close enough to touch if you raise your hand. You don't though. You just breathe. There is a peace in the closeness, the low space, the dark fabric. In a world where the sky is infinite, sometimes comfort comes from being held by something small. You notice how the tent is oriented. The entrance is not random. The direction matters. Away from prevailing winds, angled to allow moonlight without letting it wash the interior in cold silver glare. The desert is geometry, practical geometry, survival geometry. Every choice is a calculation written in felt experience rather than math. You take another breath. Warmth is rising now. Not heat like a fire gives, but warmth like your own body remembering itself. The tent preserves it, doesn't create it, just protects what you already make. And in that, you understand something profound. The desert does not provide comfort. It allows comfort, but only if you know how to ask. Not with force, not with complaint, but with cooperation. You glance toward the flap again. Outside, the wind moves, the stars burn, the cold still waits. But inside this woven shadow, you're not at war with the night. You're simply sharing space with it. Your bed tonight is not feathered or soft or luxurious. It is intentional. The warmth will come not from objects, but from proximity. To others, to fabric, to knowledge. Here, shelter is not walls. Shelter is understanding. You stay inside the tent for a moment longer, just breathing, letting your body remember what warmth actually feels like. It's not heat, not really. Not fire warmth, not blanket warmth, but something gentler. A warmth that comes from simply not losing heat to the wind. Your body appreciates that more than you might expect. But shelter alone doesn't solve everything. The desert is a good teacher. It teaches that survival happens through layers. Layers of shelter, layers of memory, and most importantly, layers of clothing. You reach for your thorb, the long robe that hangs loose around your body. It does not cling. It does not trap sweat. It flows like wind itself. White during the day, maybe brown or cream at night, always allowing the air around your skin to regulate your temperature. You might think tight clothing is best for warmth, something like puffy jackets or fleece-lined coats. But here, tight means trapped. Tight means sweat. Sweat means evaporation. Evaporation means cold, the kind of cold that chills you from the inside and doesn't let go. So you don't wrap the cold out. You invite airflow to carry your heat carefully. A mainstream historical fact settles into your thoughts. Bedouin garments evolved to maximize convection cooling during the day and minimize heat loss at night, meaning clothing strategy was not accidental. It was the product of centuries of trial, error, and memory passed from hand to hand, not scroll to scroll. You adjust your robe, pulling it closer but not cinching it. You tuck your hands into the extra space inside the sleeves, because sleeves aren't just sleeves here. They're pockets for warmth, microclimates for your fingers. You learn how to create warmth from your own breath, your own pulse, your own small furnace of being alive. Then comes the bisht, the outer cloak, often wool or camel hair. You can feel the fibres as you drape it around your shoulders, coarse but comforting, like history and protection woven into fabric. It doesn't need to be heavy. Heavy is a burden when travel is constant. Heavy slows your steps. The desert punishes slowness. So the warmth doesn't come from thickness. It comes from structure, from how the fibres trap pockets of still air, like tiny invisible blankets. You pull the cloak around your neck, and the cold steps back a little. You're learning. The desert doesn't reward force. It rewards cooperation. The next piece is the kafiyeh, but that has its own story later. For now, you focus on the way clothes become survival. You notice how each layer is loose, how air can circulate, how your body decides how warm you remain. This is clothing that was not designed for appearance. Though yes, it can be elegant. This is clothing shaped by exactly what the environment demands. There's a quirky little detail some people don't know. Goat hair, when spun and woven into fabric, has a faint natural oiliness that helps it resist both moisture and friction. It also means that when embers from cooking fires drift, the fabric is less likely to catch instantly. Desert life teaches practicality down to the fibre. You stand now, adjusting the robe at your waist. The cold outside is not defeated. It never is. But it has been made manageable. The goal is not to fight the cold or overpower it. You live with it. You breathe with it. You share air with it. Historians still argue whether Bedouin clothing styles originated primarily from Arabian tribes, adapting to environment, or whether cultural exchange along trade routes influenced the layering system. But truthfully, out here, theories don't matter. What matters is that you're warm enough to move forward. You learn by wearing, not by reading. You step outside the tent again. The cold meets you, but differently now, like someone who remembers your name instead of someone trying to figure out if you belong. The air brushes your face, and the layers you wear keep heat where it should stay, close to your heart, your chest, your core. Your movement feels natural. Nothing binds, nothing pulls. You can walk, run, kneel, sit, tend to animals, cook, prepare bedding, hold conversation, all without adjusting your clothing or thinking about discomfort. This is what it means when clothing becomes second skin. You begin to notice the way your robe sways around your legs. It catches wind, but not harshly. Wind becomes a conversation partner. There's no flapping or snapping fabric, nothing dramatic. Just quiet flow, everything is measured, everything is steady. You look at others around you. Their silhouettes move like brushstrokes on the night, loose shapes softened by darkness. No sharp lines, no rigid angles. The desert does not love sharpness. Even its mountains soften slowly over time, grain by grain. Someone beside you, maybe an elder, maybe a cousin, maybe a fellow traveller, murmurs something about how heat is a gift the body already knows how to make. The clothing just honours that, and something inside you recognises the wisdom in that. Clothing here is not defence, it is partnership. The fire you do not light, the walls you do not build, the coat you do not bundle in. All of it is the same lesson. The desert does not bend, so you bend with it. You walk a few steps away from the tent to feel the difference. The wind touches you. The cold tries to slip between the layers, but it doesn't win. Your warmth stays, not because you forced it, but because you understood how to keep it. You're not just surviving now, you're adapting. You bring your hand to the keffiyeh, the square of cloth that has followed desert travellers longer than written history has followed ink. You don't think of it as an accessory, or a symbol, or a fashion piece the way tourists wear it now. Here, it is technology. Quiet, simple, brilliant technology. You hold it up, letting it unfurl in the wind. The fabric is soft but strong. Cotton or wool, depending on the region, dyed in patterns that carry tribe, location, memory. But for you right now, it is not identity, it is survival. You fold one edge over the other, a triangle now, not a square. You bring it up to your face, wrapping it over your nose, your mouth, your cheeks. Not tightly, never tightly. The point is not to suffocate warmth, but to guide it. The cloth creates a pocket of air over your skin, a zone where your breath warms itself before returning to your lungs. Without it, your own breathing would slowly drain heat from your body, leaving your chest cold, your throat raw, your lips cracked. The keffiyeh prevents this simply by existing between you and the night. A mainstream historical note glides into your thoughts. The keffiyeh was never just a head covering. It evolved to manage temperature, moisture, dust and wind all at once. Wrapped differently for heat than for sandstorms, differently for battle than for rest, differently for travel than for sleep. The folds tell stories, the knots tell mood. A small adjustment speaks a silent language of weather and readiness. You pull one side over your shoulder and secure it. Your ears are covered now, your jaw is wrapped, the back of your neck is shielded, an important detail because heat leaves the body quickly through the spine. You exhale and the breath stays warm. You inhale and the cold arrives softened, filtered, made gentle. A quirky bit of desert wisdom murmurs through memory. The keffiyeh, when dipped in warm tea and wrapped before sleep, can hold that warmth for almost an hour, long enough to guide the body gently into rest. No fire, no furnace, just cloth and breath and knowledge. And yes, Some scholars still argue whether the kafir originated from ancient pastoral tribes or was adopted from early agricultural settlements. But when you place it over your face here, now, beneath this endless night sky, the debate feels irrelevant. This cloth belongs to the desert, not to academic argument. You move your head slightly, testing the wind. The kafir shifts with you, not resisting but flowing, the way your robe flowed earlier. Your clothing and body move as one now, not in competition. Your breath slows, your heartbeat steadies. The cold no longer stings, it simply exists around you, the way silence exists around a whisper. You walk a few steps again, and something inside you recognizes the change. You're no longer bracing against the desert, you're with it. The kafir darkens your peripheral vision, softening the world into shapes and movement rather than sharp edges. The stars blur just slightly at the edges, not because your vision has dimmed, but because the fabric filters the night into something more intimate, more internal. You're inside your own atmosphere now, a small world of warmth created by cloth and breath. You understand that warmth here is not something you find, it is something you keep. The desert does not give. You preserve what is already yours, and the kafir is the guardian of that preservation. You continue walking, the sand shifting quietly under your steps. Your face no longer aches with cold. Your jaw relaxes, your shoulders drop. The night still surrounds you, but it no longer feels like something pressing in. It feels like something vast that you're allowed to inhabit. The kafir teaches you something, without speaking, without trying. Survival here is not protection against the world, it is cooperation with it. The stars overhead glide slowly as the night deepens. The dunes rise and fall like frozen waves. Your breath is warm in the cloth, steady and alive, and somewhere inside you a realization settles as softly as sand falling back into place after wind. You do not conquer the desert. You do not endure it. You learn to be shaped by it, and the desert allows you to stay. You return to the tent, still wrapped in your kafir, still held by the warmth of your robe and cloak, and now the night has deepened into its true form. The cold has settled fully. The stars no longer feel distant. They feel like a ceiling, like a bowl resting just above your head. The air is thin and clear and full of silence. And now it is time to sleep. Not alone, never alone. In the desert, warmth is not something you create. It is something you share. You lower yourself onto the layered rugs, the woven mats, the blankets softened by 1,000 nights, and the ground beneath them is no longer a thief stealing heat from your bones. Instead, it feels steady, held by the tent, held by experience, held by the knowledge that came long before you and will remain long after. The others settle beside you. No one speaks. Speech is unnecessary here. You learn to communicate with presence. Shoulders touch, hips align, legs stretch out or bend, depending on the cold. Sleep in the desert is not about comfort. It is about positioning. You curl slightly on your side, knees gently angled toward your chest, your arms resting loosely against your body. Not pulled tight, not clenched, because tension burns heat faster than calmness keeps it. Your face is still wrapped, your breath still warm, your heart still steady. And then another person rests beside you, not touching fully but close enough that your bodies share a thin membrane of warmth, your heat radiating toward theirs radiating toward yours. You're not draining each other. You're creating a small world together, a stable climate inside a tent made of goat hair under a sky stitched with stars. A mainstream historical truth drifts into your awareness. The Bedouin sleeping arrangement was not just practicality, it was cultural memory. Families, travellers, children, elders, everyone slept close, not because space was limited, but because warmth was communal. To sleep apart was to waste life. And then there is the scholarly debate. Historians still argue whether these arrangements began purely as necessity or whether they later became symbolic, an expression of unity, loyalty, shared breath, and shared fate. But here, lying in the tent, wrapped in the night, it becomes clear the answer does not matter. Warmth is warmth, and warmth is survival. A quirky detail flickers in your memory. Some elders say that if you sleep too far from others in the desert, your dreams become too loud, too sharp, too exposed. Night air, they say, can slip into your thoughts if you do not anchor yourself with human presence. So maybe you sleep close, not just to keep your body safe, but to keep your mind soft. You feel someone shift. A shoulder brushes yours. A quiet sigh ripples through the darkness. A camel outside snorts softly, turning in its resting place. The desert at night is not silent after all, it is breathing. The tent, woven and alive, moves with the wind in slow, gentle rhythms, a subtle pulse like the rise and fall of someone sleeping. Your own breath falls into that rhythm, slow, easy, not forced. You hear the distant wind against the dunes. It isn't howling, it is whispering. It is always whispering. The sand shifts in tiny grains, moving, always moving, the desert sculpting itself as you sleep. You feel warmth now, not heat, not fire, not the kind that overwhelms, but the kind that stays, the kind that holds. You close your eyes. The darkness is not frightening here. It is familiar. It is the same darkness that has held the Bedouin for centuries. No walls, no doors, no locks, just trust and presence and shared breath. You do not think of the cold outside the tent. You do not worry about the miles of open land. You do not fear the night, because warmth is not something you lost, it is something you found in others. The desert teaches softness, but not fragility. It teaches strength, but not hardness. It teaches that survival is not the triumph of the individual, but the weaving together of lives, breaths, hands, hearts. You are not alone. You sleep in a quiet constellation of bodies, like stars lying close instead of burning alone in the sky. And as your breathing slows, the night does not feel cold anymore. It feels full, held, balanced. You do not fall asleep. You sink into sleep like sand shifting to cradle your weight instead of resisting it. The desert watches, the tent breathes, the warmth stays, and you belong. You wake, not because of noise, but because the cold shifts in tone, the way a room changes when someone quietly leaves or arrives. The night hasn't ended yet. The stars are still bright, the sky still deep, the air still thin, but now your awareness stretches beyond the tent and toward the silhouettes resting just outside. The camels. They are not decoration here. They are not props for exotic stories or tourist fantasies. Out here they are warmth, shelter, life, memory, and movement. You rise slowly so you don't disturb the others and step outside the tent. The keffiyeh still wrapped around your face, the cloak drawn close around your shoulders. The cold greets you again, but this time it feels familiar, something you know how to speak to. The camels stand or kneel nearby, their bodies large, patient, absorbing and releasing heat in rhythms older than human history. You walk toward one. It turns its head slightly, just enough to acknowledge your presence without bothering to appear impressed. Camels are never impressed. They are the philosophers of the desert, creatures who understand endurance without complaint. You place your hand against the camel's side. Warm. Not hot, not blazing. Just warm. Steady warmth. The warmth of a being who carries the desert inside its bones. A mainstream historical fact flickers across your mind. Camel body temperature shifts throughout the day to conserve water and regulate heat, rising under the sun and lowering at night to prevent heat loss. Their bodies adapt in ways humans cannot. It means they are like living furnaces at night, radiating slow, deep warmth. And you, knowing this, simply rest your shoulder lightly against the camel's flank and breathe. The warmth spreads through your cloak. It is not immediate. The desert does not give anything immediately, but slowly, in the same way the dunes shift grain by grain, warmth settles into your chest. The camel chews quietly, rhythmically, like it is considering the philosophy of chewing. Its gaze drifts across the horizon, not searching, just observing, existing. You sit beside it in the sand, not speaking. Speech would ruin the balance of this moment. Instead, you lean gently and the camel's presence becomes a wall against the wind, a shelter without needing wood or brick or fire. A quirky detail rises to mind. Some Bedouins say camels remember every slight and every kindness for a lifetime, that their grudges last longer than the dunes. Whether true or exaggerated, you choose kindness. You rest your hand along its fur, smoothing it in the direction of growth. The camel exhales, a slow, deep sigh that vibrates through its chest and into your spine. And now, you understand, warmth here is not owned, it is shared. The camel does not warm you because you demand it. It warms you because you are near, because you belong to this night, because you do not take more than you need. Historians still argue whether Bedouin reliance on camels shaped their social structures, or whether their social structures shaped how they used camels. But out here, inside this quiet night, the debate feels like sand, too fine to bother holding. What matters is the warmth, the presence, the being with instead of using. You lean your back more fully now, feeling the camel's heartbeat. Steady, unbothered, slow. Your breathing begins to match it. The night no longer presses against you. It surrounds you like water surrounds a swimmer. Complete, yes, but not consuming. You realise something here, something quiet and profound. Survival has never been about tools or weapons or clever tricks. It has always been about relationships. Your relationship to the wind, to the sand, to the heat, to the cold, and now to this camel who stands beside you like a silent guardian. The desert does not reward independence. It rewards interdependence. The tent is shelter. The clothing is warmth. The keffiyeh is breath. The camel is companionship, mobility, endurance, memory, and calm. You close your eyes for a moment, resting against the gentle rise and fall of the camel's breathing. The stars shift a little overhead. Time passes in the way desert time always passes, without urgency, without markers, without hurry. And when you finally stand, brushing sand from your robe, you feel ready to return to sleep or continue the night's journey. But you carry something now you did not have before. A warmth that does not fade when the wind moves. A steadiness that stays in your chest like an ember beneath ash. You look at the camel one last time. It looks back with that same timeless expression of disinterest tinged with quiet wisdom. And you understand each other. You're both travellers in a place that belongs to no one but accepts those who listen. You walk back toward the tent. The camel settles again, folding its legs beneath itself with the effortlessness of something that has known this ground for centuries. You slip once more beneath the tent's woven dark. You lie down close to the others, and this time, when sleep comes, it arrives easily, like a warm hand resting gently on your back. You wake again when the sky is still dark, but now there is something different in your body. Not just warmth, but energy. The slow-burning kind that feels like coals deep inside your chest. And that energy didn't come from fire or blankets or some hidden miracle. It came from what you put inside your body before the night settled. In the desert, warmth begins not with what you wear or how you sleep, but with what you consume. You sit cross-legged as someone pours tea into a small cup the size of your palm. The tea is dark, nearly black, steeped strong, flavoured with cardamom or sage or mint depending on what the land offered that season. It's not just a drink, it's heat made drinkable. You take a sip. The warmth spreads down your throat into your chest, and then outward through your limbs. It's slow, controlled, intentional. The desert doesn't allow reckless heat. It teaches warmth like it teaches everything else, through patience. A mainstream historical truth crosses your mind. Bedouin meals were traditionally high in fats and slow-burning calories. Camel milk, goat milk, clarified butter, dates, and grains that release energy gradually, because sudden bursts of heat or blood sugar are useless here. The desert is about endurance. You sip the tea again. The taste is earthy, slightly bitter, softened by whatever herb was added. It tastes like the night, like stillness, like something with roots deeper than any tree here could ever reach. Someone nearby pours milk into a bowl. Camel milk. Not store milk, not carton milk, but warm, rich, full of fat and nutrients. The kind of milk that carries the memory of sunlight and thorny shrubs and long wandering paths. You drink and the warmth deepens. It becomes less about the moment and more about the hours to come. Your body begins to understand that warmth is not something you chase. It is something you build. A quirky detail surfaces. There are old sayings that camel milk carries the desert's patience in it, that if you drink it too quickly, the desert will make you restless. So you drink slowly, because everything here is slow when done correctly. There is no rushing night, no rushing warmth, no rushing life. Historians still argue whether the use of spiced tea came from ancient trade routes, or whether it evolved independently among desert tribes who discovered that certain leaves kept the body warmer at night. But those debates feel like distant footprints, irrelevant to the person sitting here now, warming their hands around a cup while the horizon remains dark. What matters is the warmth inside you. You watch how others eat. No heavy meals, nothing that shocks the stomach or demands energy to digest. Just small portions, shared. Bread torn by hand, dates passed from palm to palm, a quiet meal that feels less like eating and more like tending a flame. In the desert, you learn the difference between hunger and emptiness. Hunger can be eased, emptiness cannot. So you feed the body enough to be strong, but never so much that you become slow. Slow is dangerous out here. Slow means the cold catches up. Slow means the wind takes more than you can afford to give. You breathe out and feel the warmth still within you. Not blazing, not burning, but steady. A single ember in a world of cold. And then you understand the truth that Bedouin carried for centuries. Fire is not the only source of heat. Warmth is also breath. Warmth is also movement. Warmth is also shared meals, shared bodies, shared rhythm. Warmth is something alive, something internal, something you protect. A fire can go out, but this warmth, if tended gently, if respected, can stay through the entire night. You stand slow, not rushing your muscles, letting the warmth settle deeper. The stars are still bright. The sky is still endless. But you are no longer at the mercy of the cold. The cold is simply another presence now, something you understand, something you can live alongside. You wrap your cloak again. You adjust your keffiyeh. You breathe in, feeling the heat inside your chest, and you walk calm, steady, carrying the night with you rather than fearing it. In the desert, survival is not about conquering the environment. It is about letting your body remember what it already knows, that warmth is not something you ask for. It is something you become. You step outside again, and now you begin to notice something you didn't see before. Not just the cold, not just the stars, not just the hush of the dunes, but the memory of heat still lingering in the land itself. The desert holds warmth in ways that are quiet and patient, and if you know how to find it, you do not need a fire at all. You walk a few steps from the tent and kneel, placing your palm against the sand. At first it feels cool, but if you press deeper, if you sink your fingers a little into the top layer, you feel it. The warmth the sun gave freely hours ago, still resting just beneath the surface like a secret waiting to be remembered. The sun is harsh during the day, but the Bedouin learned to treat that harshness as generosity, to use it, to store it, to save it for the night. You scoop sand slowly, patiently, building a small hollow, and let the warmer grains gather beneath your body as you sit. The heat rises subtly, barely noticeable unless you're still enough to feel it. And you are. You've learned stillness now. A mainstream historical detail surfaces softly. Bedouin tents were placed strategically to absorb heat through their dark goat hair fabric during the day, the black fibres pulling in sunlight and holding it like a vessel. As the night falls, the tent releases that heat inward, slowly, steadily, creating a pocket of softness in a world that gives softness rarely. You return your gaze to the tent behind you. Its dark surface, now quiet in the moonlight, carries the last warmth of the day like embers glowing inside cloth. You step closer and lightly place your hand against the outside wall. Yes, still warm, not hot, just enough. The tent is not shelter because it blocks the world, it is shelter because it remembers it. A quirky little insight passed in whispers and half-jokes between travellers. The desert is like a great tea kettle that never cools evenly. The heat moves sideways, downward, backward, lingering in places you would not expect. And if you know how to listen, how to pause, how to dig your hand into the ground or press your shoulder to the tent wall at just the right moment, warmth will answer. Historians still argue whether this way of preserving daytime heat was intentional innovation or simply discovered by accident. But innovation in the desert rarely looks like invention. It looks like witnessing. It looks like paying attention. You sit again within the tent near the lowest part of the fabric wall. The warmth rises slowly from the sand into your spine, into your ribs, into your breath. Not dramatic warmth. Desert warmth is never dramatic. It is something like memory, something like patience, something like a story told quietly and without needing to convince anyone of anything. You relax your shoulders, you loosen your jaw, you rest your hands in your lap. Your body becomes part of the slow trade between heat and time, and now you understand the truth beneath this night. The desert did not take warmth from you. You simply needed to remember where warmth goes. Heat is not gone, it only moves, and if you know how to follow it, you never need fire at all. You sit with this thought for a while, letting the sand and wool and cloth do their work. The cold no longer feels like an enemy, it feels like a neighbour, a presence, something that exists beside you, around you, but no longer inside you. You have learned how to keep what you have. You have learned how to listen to warmth instead of chase it. The desert grows quiet around you again, not silent, just quiet. full of space and distance and ancient breath. And you, small and warm and steady in the middle of all of it, belong. You look toward the distance where the dunes lean together like waves frozen mid-motion, and you realise something simple and powerful. There is no glow of flame anywhere. No flicker, no smoke, no colour. The night remains intact, untouched. You begin to understand that this absence of fire is not just necessity, but philosophy. In the desert, light can save you, but it can also expose you. Every flame announces your position, a bright exclamation mark in a landscape that prefers silence. Fire consumes what is rare: wood, brush, dung, even dry roots, and it consumes safety too. Smoke climbs, strangers follow it. So instead of flame, the Bedouin learned to keep the night dark, their warmth hidden in breath, in fabric, in closeness. You picture it now, a circle of tents without sparks, each one holding its small world of life unseen from afar. The dunes absorb their silence. The stars shine in their stead. A mainstream historical fact flickers through your thoughts. In regions where wood was scarce, fire was reserved for cooking or trade gatherings. Many travellers learned to heat stones during the day, burying them beneath the sand to release slow warmth after sunset. Fire became something you borrowed briefly, not something you relied upon. And a quirky bit of lore follows. Some Bedouin claimed that firelight could attract wandering spirits of the dunes, guests who never leave. Whether said in jest or belief, the message was the same: too much light disturbs what should rest. Historians still argue whether fear of detection or ecological scarcity shaped the tradition first, but both ring true. To survive here is to live in balance, to avoid excess. You feel the wisdom of that now. Your eyes adjust to the natural night, and suddenly you can see what light usually hides. The faint texture of sand ripples, the curve of dunes, the soft glow of starlight reflecting off the tent threads. The world does not need fire to be visible. It only needs patience. You crouch and pick up a handful of sand, let it fall through your fingers. The wind carries it away in tiny whirls. You think of how many centuries of hands have done this exact gesture, checking wind, testing texture, reading the desert the way sailors read the sea. You realise how deeply knowledge replaces tools here. A lamp burns out, but memory lasts. Without fire, nights remain quiet. Camels sleep undisturbed. The stars remain mirrored on the sand. The air smells of nothing. No smoke, no char, no residue. You breathe deeply, and the purity of it surprises you. It feels honest, clean, true. You start to grasp something else. Fire is loud. It crackles. It dominates. It draws people into one bright point and erases the rest of the world. Without it, you notice more. You hear more. You feel more. Your senses widen like the sky itself. You can even hear the soft crunch of sand as someone shifts in the tent behind you, the rhythmic chewing of a camel, the whisper of air moving between dunes. The desert without fire becomes not empty but alive. You step further into the darkness, and your body relaxes rather than tenses. The fear you thought you'd feel of the dark, of the unknown, never arrives, because the night is not unknown anymore. You've met it, you've shared air with it, you've learned its shape, and it no longer frightens you. Warmth, you realise, is not what you see, it is what you carry. The Bedouin understood this so completely that their nights, even without light, glowed in other ways, in song, in story, in laughter that didn't need to echo far. You imagine that now, a small voice humming a melody, someone whispering a prayer, a child giggling at the shadows their own hands make in starlight. That is fire too, just quieter. You close your eyes for a moment. The wind brushes your face. You feel the sand shift. The world remains dark and infinite, but you're not afraid of that infinity anymore. You belong to it, as they did. And tonight, you understand. Sometimes survival means not lighting a fire, so the night can keep its peace, and you can keep your place within it. You walk again, just a little, because the night is not something you observe from one place. It is something you move through, like water. Your feet sink softly into sand, still holding the quiet breath of daylight warmth beneath the surface. And now you begin to notice how the land itself becomes shelter. You look to the dunes, their long curved backs, and see how they are not random hills of sand, but walls shaped by wind into patterns that repeat across centuries. The Bedouin never slept on the highest point of a dune. They slept on the leeward side, where the wind passes overhead instead of through. You run your hand along the slope, watching grains slip and reform, and realise the desert is always sculpting its own architecture. A mainstream historical fact whispers into your awareness. Travellers learn to read the angle of dune ridges to determine wind direction, storm patterns, and safe resting areas. Knowledge not written in books but stored in the body through repetition and inheritance. You move lower along the dune's shadowed side, where the air is gentler, where the cold thins just enough to let your bones rest. You press your palm to the sand again, feel the way the dune shields you, turning the freezing wind into a distant hiss rather than a knife. And now you see the desert differently, not as emptiness, but as a cathedral of curves and hollows, each offering its own quiet gift of protection if you learn how to ask. A quirky bit of desert wisdom surfaces. Some say the dunes hum at night, a low vibration you can feel more than hear, created by grains of sand shifting in tiny avalanches under moonlight. Whether true or imagined, you can almost sense it now, the desert speaking to itself. Historians still argue whether ancient travellers chose their campsites primarily for safety from raiders or for warmth from terrain, but out here, in the hush of night, it becomes clear that both were woven into one instinct. To live is to know where to place yourself. You crouch near a cluster of low rocks now, noticing how even stone holds leftover heat from the sun. Bedouins sometimes slept with their backs to stones like these, using them as natural radiators, quiet and steady. You try it. The warmth is faint but real, enough to remind you that the desert is not dead or empty. It remembers the sun. You lean your shoulder against the stone, your cloak wrapped close, your keffiyeh soft around your face. The cold air moves past you but does not reach you. Blocked by the dune, broken by the rock, you're sheltered by land itself. The desert does not give warmth, it gives shape, and you learn how to rest inside that shape. You breathe slowly. The sky stretches overhead, vast and deep and silent, and you realise how rare silence is in other places. In cities, silence is something people try to create artificially. Here, silence is the world's natural state. You let your breath match it, slow, soft, unforced. You feel your heartbeat. You feel the ground. You feel the night curling around you but not consuming you. You're not fighting anything. You're not resisting anything. The desert is not an enemy. It is a teacher with a very quiet voice. And now, you're finally listening. You shift slightly, settling more comfortably, letting your spine rest against the stone's warmth. The dune blocks the wind, the sand holds heat. The night no longer feels sharp. It feels deep. Absolute, infinite. You think of how many people in the world sleep behind locked doors under roofs heavy with worry, surrounded by noise, restless minds stirring even when bodies are still. And here, in the open, under a sky wider than thought, you're safe. Not because the desert protects you, but because you have learned how to exist within its rules. You exhale once more, long and slow, your eyes soften, the night holds you, the dune shields you, the stone warms you. And for the first time, you understand that shelter is not a building. Shelter is knowledge. Shelter is placement. Shelter is belonging to the land instead of trying to force the land to belong to you. You stay there until your breath grows warm in your chest again. The desert remains vast. The stars remain endless. And you remain small, silent, warm, and right where you are meant to be. You tilt your head back again, and now the sky is no longer just sky. It is the map. The clock, the guide, the compass. In the desert, you don't look down to find direction. You look up. You watch the stars the way others watch highways and signs and glowing screens. The night has no confusion in it, only clarity. The Milky Way stretches like a river across the blackness, and you trace it with your eyes the way Bedouin travellers have traced it for centuries, maybe longer. You follow the familiar constellations, the ones you didn't notice before, the ones that waited for your attention. There is the steady North Star, low but unwavering. There is Orion's belt, sharp and exact, like 3 beads stitched into the sky. There is the curve of the Big Dipper pointing the way. These are not decorations, they are instructions. A mainstream historical truth drifts into your awareness. For nomads, stars were literacy. Children learned them the way others learn alphabets, syllables, prayers. A child could name more stars than any scholar of cities. A child could navigate across dunes that shifted every day because the sky did not shift. The stars were the constant the earth never offered. You breathe and watch the sky. The cold air sharpens your vision. The absence of fire makes the stars brighter. No smoke, no glow, no interference. Just raw cosmos pouring down. A quirky belief comes to mind. Some Bedouin elders said stars were not distant suns, but lanterns hung by ancestors to guide travellers safely through the night. Whether metaphor or memory, you feel the comfort in that idea. Light made by those who came before you, waiting to be used by those who walk now. And historians still argue whether these star mapping techniques originated independently in the desert or came from maritime traditions carried inland. But the truth is simple. Whoever walked here long enough learned that the earth cannot be trusted to stay the same. The sky is the only thing that remains. You begin to recognise the rhythm of the night as something living. The temperature shifts in subtle patterns. The wind comes and goes like breath. Your footsteps become slow, careful, deliberate. Not because you're afraid, but because the night asks for quiet. The desert is not silent. You hear the tiny clicks of insects moving beneath sand, the distant shuffle of a camel shifting its weight, the sigh of wind weaving through dunes. But everything is softened, muted, wrapped in velvet darkness. You realise something else now. The stars are not only navigation, they are timekeeping. You watch how they climb and tilt, how constellations move across the sky toward morning. There are no clocks here, no alarms, no schedules carved by artificial urgency. The universe tells you when to rest and when to move. You follow it. Your body remembers how to listen. And now, with the sky open above you and the desert calm around you, you begin to understand another truth. Survival here is not about strength. It is about harmony. You're not forcing anything, not your breath, not your pace, not your temperature. You're moving with the night instead of through it. The stars guide your steps. The sand holds your warmth. The wind carries your scent away from predators and strangers. You're not fighting the world. You're learning to live inside its shape. And strangely, this brings peace. A deep one. The kind that city walls and locked doors and electric lights can never create. Your eyes remain lifted, scanning constellations, not searching but recognizing. You begin to feel the sky is not above you but around you. The earth falls away. The cold remains, yes, but it no longer frightens, no longer bites, no longer threatens. You're not lost. You're not exposed. You're guided. You're held. You're part of a lineage that has walked this night longer than memory. The desert stretches out, infinite, quiet, eternal. The stars shine, patient, unchanging, exact. You breathe once more, slowly. And now the night does not feel vast or overwhelming. It feels like a companion walking beside you. The wind, the sand, the stars, the silence, they do not belong to you. You belong to them, and in that belonging you are safe. You return to the tent before dawn, and the world is still wrapped in that deep blue darkness that arrives just before sunrise. The kind of darkness that doesn't feel empty, but full. Full of memory, full of footsteps layered across centuries, full of voices that never needed to be written to be remembered. You sit, legs folded beneath you, cloak drawn loosely around your shoulders, and now you begin to understand that everything you have learned tonight, the warmth of shared sleep, the guidance of stars, the shelter of dunes, the quiet companionship of camels, none of it came from books. None of it came from diagrams or scrolls or written instruction. Out here, survival is not documented. It is told. It is sung, whispered, repeated, practiced, carried. You hear someone begin speaking softly in the tent. An elder perhaps, or simply someone who remembers what was given to them. Their voice is low enough that it blends with the night, and it takes you a moment to realise they are telling a story. Not to entertain, but to preserve. Words in the desert are like water. They're given carefully, held carefully, shared carefully. The story is not dramatic. It is simple, a tale of travelling from one watering place to another, a memory of a sandstorm that arrived faster than expected, a lesson about which stars to follow when the clouds hide the sky. There is no moral stated, no lecture, no command. The meaning sits quietly inside the telling, waiting for you to notice it the way you notice warmth rising slowly from buried stones. A mainstream historical fact touches your awareness. Bedouin culture was fundamentally oral, not because they lacked literacy, but because knowledge stored in books can be lost, burned, stolen, or forgotten, while knowledge stored in bodies and voices travels wherever the people do. You realize now that you're not just listening to a story. You're being woven into a lineage. The person speaking does not raise their voice or emphasize any moment. They simply trust that you are listening. In the desert, the listener carries the responsibility. The storyteller does not force understanding. Understanding is something you earn. The story continues, unhurried. You hear descriptions of dunes shifting shapes overnight, of how one must always sleep with their face angled away from the wind to avoid inhaling sand, of the importance of feeling the temperature of the air before dawn to predict whether the day will scorch or soften. These lessons are not announced as lessons. They're folded inside memory. And then comes a quirky bit of lore, spoken with a hint of amusement. Someone says that if you spill water in the desert, you must whisper an apology to the earth, because water here is life, and the land remembers every gift and every waste. Everyone chuckles under their breath. Not loudly, not sharply, but with the soft warmth of shared understanding. The elder shrugs, as if to say, maybe it's superstition, maybe it's wisdom. Either way, it harms no one to be gentle. Historians still argue whether these oral traditions began as practical guidance or spiritual reverence. But here, kneeling in this tent, it becomes clear that the distinction doesn't matter. Out here, practicality and reverence are the same. To live with the desert, you must respect it. To respect it, you must understand it. To understand it, you must listen. So you listen. You absorb. You store the words inside your bones the same way the tent stores the sun's heat in its fibres, slow and quiet and complete. The storyteller pauses to sip tea. No one interrupts. Silence is not empty. Silence is part of the story. The night outside remains endless. The horizon a soft and invisible curve, but the tent feels bright now, not with light, but with presence. You realise that what is being shared is not just information, it is identity. The desert is not survived by individuals. The desert is survived by culture, by memory, by lineage, by stories that carry maps for those who do not yet know how to read the land. You think of how cities rely on signs, machines, alarms, schedules, so loud, so certain, so insistent. And here someone simply tells you about the time they got lost between two dunes and found their way back by remembering the faint pattern of wind ripples in sand, and that is enough. The knowledge is quiet, but it is vast. You feel it settling inside you, not as facts, but as a new way of understanding the world. The desert does not teach you by force, it teaches you by presence. You glance at the others in the tent. Their faces are calm, relaxed, softened by the hour, by the warmth, by the shared breath of those who trust one another. You realise how rare this is in the world, this level of unspoken safety. You know now that warmth is not just physical, it is also relational. To survive the desert night, you do not just stay warm in your body, you stay warm in your belonging. The story ends not with a conclusion, but with a quiet sigh. The teller leans back, the tent breathes, the night settles deeper, and you understand the desert keeps its wisdom alive by giving it a voice, and now that voice is inside you. The story fades into quiet again, and you settle deeper into the layered rugs, into the warmth you've helped create just by being here. The night outside remains vast, but inside the tent the world feels close, almost small, like a candle flame cupped safely between steady hands. You glance toward the entrance flap, and for a moment you imagine someone arriving from the dark, a stranger, a traveller, someone with dust in their keffiyeh and the cold stitched into their clothing. In the desert, such a person is never turned away. Hospitality here is not a courtesy. It is survival, culture, identity, woven into the fabric of life just as tightly as the goat hair in the tent above your head. You shift a little closer to the fireless warmth at the tent's centre. Someone pours tea for the group, small cups again, steam curling like breath in the cold air. The tea is passed hand to hand without words, because the desert teaches that the greatest kindnesses do not announce themselves. They happen like breathing, quiet, necessary, unnoticed, until they are needed most. A mainstream historical fact rises in your thoughts. In Bedouin tradition, a stranger who enters the tent is granted protection as if they were family for 3 days, no questions asked, no name required, no history needed, 3 days to rest, to warm, to remember how to be human again. Only after those 3 days may stories be exchanged, may origins be spoken, may truth be revealed. The desert knows that survival should come before identity, And out here, that truth becomes law. You picture it. A wanderer appears at the fringe of your tent's shadow, exhausted by wind and distance. You say nothing. You offer water, a seat, a piece of bread, warmth made not from flame but from presence. The stranger does not need gratitude. The host does not need praise. This is simply how life continues. There is a quiet nobility in that. Hospitality not performed, not forced, not transactional, just given, freely. A quirky bit of law drifts to you now. In some tribes, if a guest touches the tent pole while entering, it is a silent sign that they are invoking sanctuary, meaning that even if they carry danger behind them, the tribe is honor-bound to protect them. You imagine this. Your hand brushing the pole, the woven fibres rough beneath your fingers, the weight of the tent's meaning settling over you like a cloak. Safety without negotiation, belonging without proof. No city in the world offers trust that quickly. And yet here, under the stars, in the cold night where warmth is precious, trust becomes the most valuable currency of all. Historians still argue whether this hospitality arose from necessity or ethics, whether the harshness of the desert shaped kindness, or whether kindness shaped the ability to live in harshness. But here, surrounded by people who sleep close and breathe warmth into the night, you understand the answer is both. In a land where the environment takes more than it gives, humans learn to give to one another freely. That giving is what kept them alive. The tea is poured again, the cup warms your fingers, the night remains cold outside, but inside your chest a warmth grows that is different from the warmth of milk or fabric or sand. This warmth has nothing to do with temperature. It has to do with being welcomed, and with welcoming. You think of the world beyond this tent, places where doors lock, where eyes avert, where strangers are feared before they are understood. But here, the desert strips away the performance of self, leaving only the truth. All travellers are vulnerable. All travellers are human. You sip the tea slowly, letting its warmth spread the way trust spreads, quietly, with patience. Someone murmurs a joke about how camels understand hospitality too, though in their own very camel-like way, non-committal, unimpressed, begrudgingly affectionate. A soft ripple of laughter follows, the kind of laughter that doesn't disturb the night, just folds into it. Outside, the wind brushes sand against the tent walls, but it doesn't intrude. The tent stands firm, steady, shaped by hands that have built thousands just like it. This tent has held weddings, births, grief, storms, music. It has sheltered enemies and turned them into guests. It has held warmth without fire for longer than memory can reach. You realise now, the desert does not care about who you were before you came here. The desert only cares about whether you listen. And the Bedouin learned long ago that listening, not conquering, is what allows a person to stay. You look at the others around you, their faces calm, their breath slow. There is no tension here, no fear, no performance, just presence, a belonging that does not need to be spoken aloud. You realise something deep and quiet. The cold night outside no longer feels threatening. It feels shared. The people beside you are not merely companions, they are warmth, they are shelter, they are safety. You understand now that survival in the desert has never been about strength of the body. It has always been about strength of connection. You sip your tea one last time. The steam rises slowly, disappearing into the air, and when you set the cup down, you feel it. The kind of warmth that does not fade, the kind that lives in the chest, not the skin, the kind that exists because you are not alone. The desert is vast, the night is cold, but you are held by tent, by cloth, by story, by trust, by people. Warmth without fire, safety without walls, belonging without condition. You breathe softly, deeply, and the desert breathes with you. The night stretches on, and the horizon is still a dark, unbroken line, but something inside you has shifted. The cold no longer feels like something to fear or resist. It is simply there, like the sand, like the stars, like the slow turning of your own breath. You understand now that the desert was never meant to be conquered. It was meant to be joined. Every step you've taken tonight, every sip of tea, every shared breath in the tent, every gentle adjustment of your keffiyeh has been teaching you how to belong. You rise slowly, careful not to disturb the others. The air is still cold, but it no longer feels sharp. The layers of your clothing move with you. Your breath warms your face. Your body carries the memory of warmth you've created and preserved. Your steps are soft. You know now how to walk here. Not heavy, not rushed, not loud. The desert has taught you to move with intention, to let the ground shift under you without trying to control it. You step outside the tent once more. The dunes stretch into the distance like waves of a frozen sea, and you realise something. These dunes change every day. Wind shapes them, time shapes them, yet they are always recognisable, always exactly themselves. You have changed tonight too, shaped by breath, by warmth, by presence, but you are still you, just quieter, softer, a version of yourself that remembers how to listen. You walk a little, letting the sand whisper beneath your steps. The camel lifts its head as you pass, acknowledging you in that steady, unimpressed way camels always do. Its warmth radiates into the air around it, subtle but constant. You pass a hand gently along its side, and it closes its eyes for a moment. Not affection exactly, just shared existence. That is enough. A mainstream historical truth returns to you. The Bedouin did not survive the desert by overpowering it, but by studying it, memorizing it, respecting it. Every dune, every star, every wind current was not an obstacle. It was information, a conversation, a relationship. They did not fight the land, they coexisted with it. A quirky belief comes back too, one whispered half seriously, half poetically, that the desert watches, always, that it knows who moves with humility and who moves with arrogance, that those who rush, take, demand or boast are gently removed by wind, by thirst, by time, but those who move with patience are welcomed. You feel the truth of that now. The desert accepts you because tonight you did not try to change it. You let it be what it is, and you let yourself be shaped. Historians still argue whether the Bedouin became this way because of the desert, or whether the desert simply mirrored something already inside them. But it doesn't matter. Tonight has shown you that identity is reciprocal. You're shaped by the places you inhabit, and in return you leave a subtle trace. Footsteps, breath, memory. You sit again at the edge of a dune, the sky vast above you. The stars have shifted slightly, marking the slow approach of dawn. You feel the cold, yes, but you are not cold. The warmth inside you is steady, built layer by layer, not through force but through belonging. You think back to everything the night has shown you. You learned that warmth begins with breath. That clothing is not armour, it is partnership. That shelter is not walls, it is awareness. That companionship is not luxury, it is lifeline. That fire is not necessary for light, that the desert is not empty, that silence is not loneliness, that vulnerability is not weakness. And most of all, you learned that survival is not about domination, it is about harmony. You close your eyes and breathe in the desert air one last time tonight. It is cold, yes, but it is honest. You breathe out and the warmth stays. You have learned how to keep it. So now, as the stars soften and dawn prepares to brush the dunes with its first faint sand-coloured light, let your breath slow. You have walked the night. You have learned to hold warmth the way the desert holds memory. Quiet, patient, subtle. There is no rush here, no urgency. The world outside your door may demand pace, noise, achievement, proof. But here, beneath this endless sky, all you're asked to do is exist. Feel your shoulders soften. Feel your jaw loosen. Feel your chest warm from the inside out. You do not need to chase warmth. You do not need to brace against cold. You simply allow both to be here, and allow yourself to be here with them. The tent breathes behind you. The camel settles into the sand. The wind drifts across the dunes like a hand smoothing a blanket. Everything is exactly as it needs to be. Let your body feel heavy now, in the gentle way that means it is ready to rest. Let your thoughts loosen like grains of sand falling back into place. Let the night carry you, the way it carried every traveller before you. You are not alone. You are not lost. You are held by fabric, by story, by breath, by presence, by the quiet understanding that you belong. Sleep now. The desert is watching over you.